Hi friend, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm in the kitchen making some super fun and easy St. Patrick's Day recipes. These are perfect for a family dinner or just an excuse to cook some cozy comfort food at home. So if you've been searching for St. Patrick's Day food ideas, easy Irish recipes, or a full St. Patrick's Day dinner menu, then you're in the right place. And some are just some green recipes that my kids said we absolutely had to try. So let's get into it. Today we're going to be making Irish soda bread, potato pancakes, a traditional shepherd's pie, a kid-friendly grasshopper pie, and no-bake chocolate mint bars. First up, I'm going to be making Irish soda bread. And the best thing about this recipe, there's no yeast, no rise time. It's a perfect no-fuss bread recipe. This is a perfect, easy, and hearty bread recipe for beginners. It's going to give you the perfect golden crust and tender bread inside, perfect for buttering with jam, or serving on the side of your traditional shepherd's pie.
For this hearty rustic loaf, I'm going to start with a mixture of flour. In a large bowl, add in 1 2/3 of a cup of all-purpose flour, 1 2/3 of a cup of whole wheat flour, and 1 cup of oats. If you prefer making a plain white soda bread, you can swap these out and only use all-purpose flour. Mix in 1 teaspoon of baking soda and 1 teaspoon of salt. I'm just giving the dry ingredients a little mix here with my fingers to incorporate all the ingredients together. Now I'm going to add in 1 1/2 cups of buttermilk. Then, using my hands in kind of a claw shape, I'm going to mix the dough until it just comes together. It should start to pull away from the sides of the bowl and turn into a little dough clump. Then, on a lightly floured surface, all I need to do is shape the loaf. I'm not really kneading the bread here, I'm just kind of squishing and squeezing it together to form a rustic circular loaf. Press it out into a disc about 1 1/2 inches thick. And while I was making the dough, I already had a pan preheating in my 400 degrees Fahrenheit or 200 degrees Celsius oven. I'm just going to put a little bit of butter in the bottom of the pan, and then my bread dough is ready to go inside. If you don't have a pan like this to cook your bread, you could also just place it on top of a baking sheet. Now, using a sharp knife, I'm going to make a cross-shaped slice about 1/3 of the way through the dough. This is part of the Irish tradition of blessing the bread, but it also helps the dough cook evenly all the way through the center of the loaf. Finally, with my knife, I'm going to pierce the top of the bread in the middle of each quarter. And this next part is optional and completely decorative, but I'm going to brush the top of my loaf with a little bit of my leftover buttermilk, and then sprinkle a little bit of the oats on top. The buttermilk is going to give you that beautifully golden crust, and it's going to help the oats stick to the top of the loaf. And my bread is ready to go into my preheated oven for 50 minutes or until the top is golden brown and the bread sounds hollow when tapped. Let your loaf cool slightly and then it's ready to slice and serve. This rustic loaf is at its best served warm and fresh. And since this bread dough comes together in minutes, it's a perfect easy recipe that you can make and have on the table in no time.
Next up, we're going to make this cozy, delicious shepherd's pie. This is a must for any St. Patrick's Day dinner. Hearty meat, tender veggies, all in a rich gravy and topped with a creamy mashed potato crust. This easy shepherd's pie is perfect for family dinner, and you can even make it ahead of time because this classic Irish comfort food tastes even better the next day.
The first thing I'm going to do for this recipe is wash and prepare my veggies. And I'm going to do this super quick and easily by pulsing them in a food processor. But of course, you could also do this by hand. Here I'm just dicing up 1 shallot, 1 rib of celery, and 2 carrots. I already have my large Dutch oven preheating on medium heat. Add enough oil just to coat the bottom of the pan. Then I'm going to add in my minced veggies and fry in the oil until they're softened, which takes about 5 minutes. And while those are cooking away, I'm going to slice a 1/4 pound of mushrooms. Add these to the pan with the rest of the vegetables. And at this point you can add a little more oil if you notice it's getting a little dry. Now I'm just going to place the lid on the pot and allow the vegetables to cook down about 5 minutes more. Now that everything's starting to soften and brown together, I'm going to add in 1 pound of ground lamb. Stir this into the vegetables. I'm just using my spoon to break up the meat as it cooks. Once the meat has browned and you see no pink left, sprinkle on top 2 tablespoons of all-purpose flour. Stir this into the vegetables and meat mixture. This is going to help thicken the gravy. And to add a little bright pop of color, I'm going to add in 1 cup of frozen peas. And to add even more flavor into my sauce, I'm going to add in 1 can of tomato paste and 2 teaspoons of Worcestershire sauce. Mix this in along with 1 cup of water. Mix this in with the flour until it starts to bubble away and become thick. Season this with salt and pepper, and then I'm just going to place on the lid, reduce the heat to a simmer, and allow the mixture to slowly cook for about 20 minutes, or until the meat and vegetables are super tender and melt in your mouth. And while my shepherd's pie filling is cooking away, I'm going to get on with making the potatoes. Wash, peel, and cut into chunks 2 pounds of potatoes. I'm using russet potatoes here, but you could also use a different type of potato like Yukon Gold. Add this to your sauce pot with enough water to submerge the potatoes and bring it to a boil over medium-high heat. Let them cook about 15 to 20 minutes or until they're fork tender. Then you can drain off the potatoes and return them to the pot to evaporate off any excess moisture. Now I want these mashed potatoes to be relatively thick, since I'm using these to form my mashed potato crust on top of the shepherd's pie. I'm going to add a 1/4 cup of butter and mash these with a potato masher until they're smooth and creamy. Then season them with salt to your taste. Now that my filling and the potatoes are ready, it's time to assemble the shepherd's pie. I'm just going to spoon the cooked filling into a casserole dish. Of course, if you were using a smaller oven-proof pan, you could assemble the whole shepherd's pie right inside. After smoothing out my filling, I'm going to place little dollops of my mashed potatoes on top of the filling. Gently smooth out the potatoes to form a crust on top. And I'm just being careful here not to mix the potatoes into the filling. And you can finish it off by making any decorative swoops and swirls on top of the crust. And to give me that beautiful golden brown finish, I'm going to add a little bit of butter to the top of the potatoes. And since this whole casserole is already cooked, all I need to do is pop it back into the oven on broil for about 5 minutes, or until the top of the crust has those little golden peaks on top. Make sure to keep a close eye on it at this point, because this part can happen quite quickly. Remove it from the oven and it's ready to serve right away. This pie is so rich and flavorful. It's the perfect centerpiece for any St. Patrick's Day dinner. This is another great casserole dish that you can prep the day before and just pop it into the oven when you're ready to serve it, because leftovers taste even better the next day, after all the flavors in the filling have had a chance to mix and mingle in the fridge overnight. And if you're having trouble finding ground lamb, you can swap this out for ground beef and make an equally delicious cottage pie.
Continuing on with St. Patrick's Day recipes, we're going to be cooking even more potatoes. These crispy potato pancakes are also known as Irish Boxty. They're golden and crisp on the outside with a tender potato inside. You can serve them as a snack with sour cream, as a side dish to your favorite dinner, or our favorite way of enjoying them is alongside a hearty eggs and bacon breakfast.
The first thing I'm going to do for this recipe is wash, peel, and chop my potatoes for mashing.
Now while my potatoes are boiling, I'm going to start grating my raw potatoes.
You can of course start this recipe with leftover mashed potatoes, or you can make them fresh.
Now I've got all the potatoes grated and I'm just going to set this aside for a few minutes and then I'm going to squeeze out all the moisture. To get all the moisture out of the potatoes, I'm just going to put a cloth inside of a bowl like this and we're going to squeeze all of the potatoes.
After I've squeezed out all of the excess moisture, I'm just going to set my raw potatoes aside in a bowl. I like to do this step right before my mashed potatoes are ready. This just prevents the raw potatoes from turning brown.
Now my potatoes are done boiling. I just have them drying in the pot here. and I'm going to start mashing them. Of course, you could just use a regular potato masher. There's not really a need to make them super smooth since we're mixing them with our grated raw potatoes anyways, but I am gonna use a potato ricer today just because it goes so much quicker.
I want the mashed potato part of this recipe to be a pretty thick mixture. That way I won't need to add any flour to stiffen and bind the potato mixture together. However, if you are making this recipe with leftover mashed potatoes and they are quite soft and creamy, feel free to mix in some all-purpose flour as needed to give you a thick, dry potato mixture.
I found a bunch of different recipes for Boxty online, and all of them seem to be a little bit different. Some people mix in grated onions, scallions, some recipes mix this with milk or buttermilk, and some of the recipes use flour to bind all the potatoes together. I'm going to stick with this super simple recipe that I found where it just uses potatoes and salt.
Now my potatoes are mashed and I've added them to my grated raw potatoes. I'm just going to sprinkle on top about a half a teaspoon of salt, but you can use more or less depending on your taste. Bring this whole mixture together with either a spoon or your hands. And then all I need to do is shape my little potato pancakes.
Now the potatoes are all mixed and ready to go. Most of the recipes I found, everybody cooks these right away in some hot oil.
I'm just using my hands to shape these little round potato pancakes. You can make them bigger or smaller depending on what your family likes. Of course, bigger ones will take a little bit longer to fully cook, and the smaller ones will fry up relatively quickly. And I already have a pan preheating to medium-high heat. Add enough oil to coat the bottom of the pan. Then, in batches, fry on both sides the little potato pancakes. I fried mine for about 2 minutes on each side. This was enough time to fully cook them and give them the perfect golden brown crust on the outside. Remove these to a plate and then continue cooking the rest of your potato mixture. And they're ready to serve warm and fresh. These are a great little snack or side dish served just as they are. They're great served with a little dollop of sour cream or creme fraiche on top. And probably our favorite way of serving them is on the side of a hearty breakfast with bacon and eggs in the morning. They have the perfect crisp and crunchy golden crust on the outside, while the inside mashed potatoes stay warm and super soft and creamy. These are another great meal prep idea where you can make a big batch and freeze them for later. Then all you need to do is fry them fresh in the morning.
Now as we jump into the sweeter side of things, these recipes aren't specifically Irish, but we're going to be getting into some green desserts. First up, we're making no-bake mint chocolate dessert bars. These are perfect if you need a quick and easy St. Patrick's Day dessert recipes and you don't even need to turn on the oven.
I'm going to start this recipe with the rich chocolate base for the bars. In a medium saucepot on medium-low heat, melt a 1/4 cup of butter along with a 200-gram bag of mint chips. And if you can't find any mint chips, you can just use regular chocolate chips and add in a teaspoon of mint extract. To the melted chocolate, I'm going to stir in a 1/4 cup of cream and stir until the chocolate starts to thicken. Then stir in 1½ cups of graham cracker crumbs and a 1/2 cup of shredded coconut. I'm going to place this base layer into the bottom of a lined 8-inch square pan. Then I'm going to pop it into the refrigerator to chill while I get on with the next layer. Cream a 1/2 cup of softened butter until it's light and fluffy. Then I'm going to add in 3 cups of icing sugar, 1 teaspoon of mint extract, a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and a few drops of green food coloring. Drizzle in 2 tablespoons of cream. Beat this together until it's smooth, thick, and just spreadable. And the creamy mint layer is ready to get spread on top of my chilled base layer. And now finally, I'm going to add the rich chocolate top. Place the pan back into the fridge to chill, and I'm just going to make a super simple chocolate ganache. Melt together 1½ cups of semi-sweet or dark chocolate chips with a 1/4 cup of heavy cream. You can either do this in a pot on the stove or in short bursts in the microwave. Stir this together until the chocolate is silky smooth. Then I'm going to pour this final layer on top of my chilled mint bars. Gently spread it out all the way to the sides and corners of the pan. And then it's ready to go back into the fridge for the final chill. Once the chocolate on top is chilled and set, remove it from the oven and it's ready to slice into bite-sized bars. And since these dessert bars are super rich and packed with an intense mint flavor, I like to cut them into relatively small portions. This no-bake recipe is super quick and easy to make. The perfect St. Patrick's Day dessert that's ready in no time. I like to keep these bars stored in the fridge. Pull them out a few minutes before you're ready to serve them.
And last but definitely not least is a grasshopper pie. This is another great no-bake St. Patrick's Day dessert. Now this dessert is typically flavored with alcohol like creme de menthe, but since I'm making this dessert for some kids to enjoy, we're going to make this one alcohol-free. It's the perfect easy St. Patrick's Day pie recipe that's bright green and looks extra festive on a dessert table.
I'm going to start this recipe by making the chocolate cookie crust. To do this, you can either place 2 cups of chocolate cookie crumbs into a bowl or crush 24 Oreo cookies into crumbs. And to bring it together, I'm just going to mix in a 1/4 cup of melted butter. Once all the crumbs are moistened with the butter, you can shape it into a crust in your pie plate. I'm just going to press it out evenly onto the bottom and up the sides of the plate. Now you can stop right here and place this into the fridge to chill, but I'm going to bake mine in a preheated 350 degrees Fahrenheit or 180 degrees Celsius oven for 10 minutes. I find that this step really helps the pie crust bind together. Just make sure you're not a clumsy disaster like me and drop your pie plate all over the inside of the oven. Luckily, I had just enough cookie crumbs to make another pie crust. The first thing I'm going to do is mix up my chocolate whipped cream. Place 1 cup of white chocolate chips in a heat-proof bowl. Then in a sauce pot, heat 1.5 cups of 35% cream until it just starts to steam. Pour this over the white chocolate chips and stir it together to melt. I'm going to set this aside to cool, then cover with plastic wrap and chill in the fridge. Meanwhile, in a sauce pot, heat together a 1/2 cup of milk with 2 cups of mini marshmallows. Stir this until it's smooth and melted. Then remove it from the heat and set it aside to cool. I'm just going to stir mine a few times as it cools. This will just prevent it from forming a film and will help it to cool more evenly. And now I can whip the cooled chocolate whipped cream until it holds a soft peak. Add in the cooled melted marshmallow mixture, 2 teaspoons of mint extract, and a few drops of green food coloring. I'm going to whip this whole thing together on low until it's light, fluffy, and everything is combined. And I'm ready to spread this soft filling into my prepared pie crust. I'm going to cover this with plastic wrap and allow it to chill in the fridge for at least 4 hours or overnight. And I'm going to decorate this dreamy pie right before I'm ready to serve it. I'm just adding a few decorative dollops of whipped cream to the edges of my pie and a generous drizzle of melted mint chocolate to the top. And for a little added flourish, I'm just going to grate some chocolate shavings all over the top of the pie. And this soft and fluffy grasshopper pie is ready to serve right away. It still has all that delicious flavor of the original grasshopper pie, but it's kid and family friendly for anyone to enjoy.
And there you have it, a full easy St. Patrick's Day menu. From savory breakfast sides all the way to sweet desserts at dinner. Thanks so much for stopping by the kitchen. I hope this gave you some inspiration for some fun, family-friendly St. Patrick's Day recipes. Happy cooking and happy St. Patrick's Day. I'll see you in the next video.
And as always, you can find a link to the full written recipes in the description box below. Thanks for stopping by.